Okay, and good evening, Democrats.
Good evening, Democrats.
That wasn't good enough. Let's try it again. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, Democrats!
Good evening, Democrats.
Okay, on Zoom, we'll give you a pass for this one, but we want to hear some energy, we want to hear some excitement. Hello to everybody in here, out there, brand new members, first time, long time members. Hope everybody has been getting out to some protest, making your voices heard. It's already working. I would like to tell you tonight, the Tesla stock is plummeting. That the media is finally paying real attention to a Trump scandal with Signalgate this week. A Democrat won a special election in Pennsylvania last night. That's been Republican since the 1860s. Trump is not invincible. He wants you to believe that this is futile. And Trump is not a king. We will end this.
Yes.
Next month, on April 23rd, we're going to be joined by our Congressman Ted Lieu. We've got a lot to talk about with him, as you can imagine. If you have questions that you want me to ask Ted Lieu, email the club, we'll ask them. We'll also have our board election next month. We have some new folks who'll be joining the board. Step forward. We're going to get to meet them. You'll all get to meet them, the new members. And we're going to bring on the new executive board for the Santa Monica Democratic Club. Okay, enough business. We'll get to more of that later. Let's bring out our first guest right away. She's the 50th Lieutenant Governor of California and the first woman to ever serve in that role. Before that, she was the ambassador to Hungary in the Obama administration. And now she's running to be the next governor of California. Please welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis. I'm going to be behind the protection of my lectern here. Try talking into it.
I turned it on. Hello. Thank you, John.
Okay, there we go.
Why don't we start here? And I hope everyone on the Zoom can see us pretty clearly, yeah? And then when we do Q&A, I may get a little closer to folks.
Okay, great. So did you want to start off? And then
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. I will add one piece to my bio. I spent about 20 years in construction, in building housing communities in the Sacramento region, and I know that's really relevant to some of the major issues you all have down here in Santa Monica. So let me again just start by saying thank you to all of you. I worked at the state party when I was just out of graduate school up in Sacramento. It was 1992 when Bill Clinton and Al Gore and Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer were all on the ballot. And ever since, I've been a delegate, I think, to the National Convention 7 times, something like this. I ran in my district. I was Dianne Feinstein's appointee to the state party for a while. And I just believe so much in this. And I know it's hard to find the time. It's hard to get your friends to come out and volunteer. It's hard to get yourself out there doing the precinct walking or going elsewhere. But this is really the strength of our party. And even in a time like this, when it all feels really tough, the fact of the matter is that Nancy Pelosi always says the VIPs in politics, it's the volunteers in politics. We're the VIPs because we do what it takes to win elections. Okay, so I often say that my story really started with my father. He came to the United States when he was 15. He came as a refugee. a displaced person is what they called it under that program after the Second World War. He was 15, spoke no English, had no money, and came by himself. He had an uncle in Lodi, California, up in the northern part of the state, but in the valley. And he moved in with him into a plywood garage. He went to school, he learned English, and he worked in the fields as a farm worker. And a family sort of took him in and encouraged him to go to college. So he moved to Sacramento, and he worked his way through Sacramento State as a waiter in the governor's mansion. And this very much started our family's involvement in our community, in governance, and in all things related to the way that our city was run. My father's company grew and grew. I went off to college and then went and got my MBA at Berkeley, and then went and joined my father in our business. I became president of our family business, and we built master plan communities all over the Sacramento region. Major projects, very, very difficult to do. And for 18 years, I would go before city council, go before planning commissions, go before school boards, go before boards of supervisors, and say, hey, if we don't build housing, we're going to have a real problem in the future. We need to build housing. And very often, what would happen with our projects is, in order to get them approved, you had to have fewer and fewer and fewer housing units in order to reduce the threshold for impacts, right? Fewer houses takes pressure off of the traffic impacts, all of this. So it was a very, it was the kind of work where I was constantly engaged with the community, but also very much running a business and having to do what we needed to do to make sure that that we could get our projects, move them forward, so we could pay the banks back and pay our workers, our staff, all of that. So I loved that work. I honestly thought that I would do it forever, but I was always encouraged to go run for something. I didn't think anybody was going to vote for somebody in housing, because if you remember, it just was not that popular for a long time in California. So because I was constantly working to help elect good people, first I worked for Hillary Clinton, and then when she stepped out of the race, I worked my heart out for Barack Obama, and long story short, became U.S. ambassador to Hungary. It did not seem like this would be such a relevant place to be posted, but about 5 months after I got there, Viktor Orban was elected with a supermajority and began to dismantle Hungarian democracy. And because Hungary was considered sort of, truly a mission accomplished country for the United States. They'd had a free market economy and had transitioned to a democratic system, and in many ways were far ahead of other former satellite countries. There wasn't a lot of expertise still at the State Department, so our embassy was very much the tip of the spear in trying to figure out how to deal with Viktor Orban. And I tell you, we did our best, and we made a fair amount of progress, but of course, all of that came crashing down when Donald Trump won in 2016. So 2016, I thought I would go work for Hillary Clinton. I had been continuing to do work at the State Department. I wrote a book, which was hard to get published because nobody knew about Hungary or cared at the time. But I did get it published, and it was translated and published in Hungary as well. But I thought I would go back and work on national security issues in a Clinton administration. And as people and women marched across the country in protest and started running for office, I became what I call that class of 2018, which is women who really did not see themselves putting their name on the ballot, even though it was something that was always kind of there. actually stepping into the arena is it takes a lot of courage. And I know we have some members here of the City Council who just went through a pretty significant campaign. It takes a lot. But all the fear, all the apprehension that I'd ever had, it just sort of melted away. I ran in a crowded field and was in a runoff with a sitting state senator who is actually quite a good friend of mine right now. But I won by 14 points to become the first woman elected to this position. Thank you. By the way, a big part of that campaign was visiting all 58 counties of California. I have revisited almost all of them, but by the time we get to the election in 2026, I will have gone back and fulfilled my promise to return to every county. Okay, very briefly, I'm going to just talk about my priorities as lieutenant governor, because I've been in this position now for 6 years, 6.5. It was an office that had really suffered over the years, and my number one goal was to rebuild the functionality of the office. People were very disparaging of the office of lieutenant governor. When I was running, they said, well, why would anybody want that? It doesn't do anything. Today, there are many people running to succeed me, and nobody says that about my office now, and I'm very, very proud of it. What we did is, first and foremost, we worked with the governor's office and we ran a bill to put the lieutenant governor on the board of the community college system. Why this is relevant is the LG had been on UC Regents, CSU trustees. We got that done in order for there to be one person, and now it is the lieutenant governor, who sits on all 3 boards of public higher education. He told you the story about what education meant to our family. My father started out in the fields, and he ended up starting and growing a successful business. You know, I often say, between my husband and myself, 3 out of 4 of our parents came to the United States with nothing as refugees. 3 out of 4 of our grandmothers never learned to read or write. So the pathway into the economy, into the society of California, in my mind, runs directly through the halls of our system of public higher ed. You know, we have 2.8 million students enrolled in public higher education. The vast majority of those are in community colleges. And almost 40% of that 2.8 are the first in their family to go to college. So I have seen this as central to my job to make our system of higher ed more efficient, more accessible, more affordable, and easier to navigate, particularly for those first-gen students. My husband and I have 2 boys. One just finished college, one is about to, and they've had us to help them navigate it. I see myself as being able to kind of play, like bring the mom vibe to the job, to say, how do we get our students through in a way that makes it worth their time? Because let's face it, for a lot of our students, there's a real opportunity cost, as it was for my dad, of not working full-time right out of high school. Okay, finally, the other things, and I've already gone about 5 minutes more than I want to, but let me just say very quickly that I am the chair of the State Lands Commission. A big part of that has been dealing with the phasing out of California's legacy offshore drilling off the coast. It is not worth the economic interests that these, frankly, these small companies that have come and bought these facilities up. It just does not make sense to risk what can happen to the ecology and tourism and community health of risking oil spills. So a lot of this equipment is 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. But the reality is that they got very, very good leases when they got them. And it's very difficult for us to actually have the legal authority. And by the way, I want to thank the Office of the Attorney General, because they provide enormous legal resources to help us in all this. And then as the first woman at LG, I do a lot of work. We have a whole legislative portfolio. Anywhere where we can help with equity and diversity and equal opportunity. We work to advance legislation and have, again, a whole portfolio of issues that we get behind regularly. And then, finally, and I'm not going to talk about this at all unless somebody asks me later, but the governor, by executive order, made me California's representative for international affairs and trade because I'm a former U.S. ambassador and because this not enough attention had been really placed in the importance of our economy, of our exports, of our supply chain issues, of the ports that are the largest port complex in the country, and foreign direct investment and what it means to the economy. So okay, I think that's it. And then, and now I'd really like to hear from you as well as answer your questions. But if you could also just start by telling me a couple of words about yourself, that would be great.
Okay, so hold on a second. I have some questions that I took from the members in
Okay.
advance, which is how we usually do it. If we have time, I'll throw it to the audience. But I'm going to try to condense, because even the questions I have, I want to get it to as many topics as we can. So I'm going to combine a few ideas. One of them is really about how your approach would be to dealing with the federal government, specifically with this administration. You talked about your experience seeing what Viktor Orban did, so you've seen this type of stuff, and we're all reading the news. Obviously, you also serve in the Newsom administration. We see some of the tactics that he's done, and he's taken a lot of heat for having these podcast interviews with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. How do you balance this thing that Governor Newsom is trying to do, and some people are giving him heat for that, versus the need to receive federal dollars, but also wanting to seem like you're willing to take on this existential threat to our country?
Well, that's that's the question of the moment. I'm an experienced diplomat, and I would not have thought how relevant it would be in this moment to be able to use diplomacy. At the same time, I will never back down from the values that this state stands for and that have made the state of California the great state that we are. Democracy, in any democracy, it is true that the majority rules. But even more important, what sets democracy apart is that minority rights are protected. We will not stop protecting minority rights and fighting for the rights of everybody. And I don't think that these things are incompatible. I will say that part of diplomacy is figuring out, well, how do you do this? How do you walk that line? And one thing that I will say, quite frankly, is the fact that our Attorney General is running for re-election, and our Attorney General has made it clear that he is going to use every possible avenue of the legal system to fight Trump, which frankly is one of the two most important places where pushback is housed, right? It's that and it's the next election. So between now and 2026, the courts are the battlefield. And so the governor and the legislature have allocated significant additional resources, and I am going to back that up 100%. And when it comes to the issues that we care about here, combating climate change and transitioning to clean energy, not backing down. When it comes to protecting our LGBTQ plus community, not backing down. And by the way, I grew up in Sacramento, but I lived most of the last 20 years in San Francisco. And when I went to Hungary, they told me I couldn't march in the Pride Parade. And the Hungarians made it so that they said, well, if you march, then we're going to have to take resources away from protecting the participants to protect your participation. So they got away with that the first year, but by the second year, we had our own plan for security, and I became the first American ambassador ever to march in Budapest Pride, and Viktor Orban just outlawed Budapest Pride. So I will never back down from that community. You know, it is, again, part of what makes our state great, that we are a beacon for so many people who know they can come here and be safe and celebrated and, frankly, just free to be whoever they want to be. And then I will never back down from my immigrant story or California's immigrant story. We have benefited overwhelmingly from the generous immigration policies of the state of California over many, many decades. Immigration plus education plus opportunity equals the 5th largest economy in the world. That is our story. So we're going to be grappling with this because they're coming after us. They're coming after us on these things. And we're also going to have to talk about the price of eggs and the cost of living and the things, frankly, that we were not able to resonate with people across the country. And we can do that in California because we do have a booming economy. We do have tools and capacity to handle those issues as well. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about housing and how that goes along with it. But that's it. We don't back down. And I'm going to use my diplomatic skills to be able to navigate what we have to do in order to be able to work with the federal government where we can and speak out on the issues that define us as Californians.
Okay, well, you led me right to the next topic, which is housing. And so this is a really important issue for Santa Monica as we try to figure out how to meet our RENA numbers, and the city council's been working on that. HUD, meanwhile, estimates that in California, there's 1.5 million renter households that are both low income and paying more than 50% of their incomes for rent and utilities. So this is driving homelessness crisis 100%. Now, our club took a position in the last election to try to do something for these renters by supporting Proposition 33, which would have repealed Costa-Hawkins. But I know that you opposed that, and you also supported Prop 34, which passed and is now making it so that the AIDS Healthcare Foundation wouldn't be able to put something like that on the ballot again. So if that's not the right approach, which is repealing Costa-Hawkins to enable more rent control, then how do you see the solution to providing rental assistance for these Californians who are, struggling to make ends meet?
So I'm a transparent person. I'm going to tell you where I stand on things. And when I ran the first time, my argument around the issue of repealing Costa-Hawkins was that I didn't want the state to be out of the conversation. Santa Monica is unique. Everybody in the world, given the opportunity to live here, would want to live here. It makes the issue here different. Dealing with it here is going to be a different formula than anywhere else. But across the state of California, other cities have just other challenges with this. So what we did and what I supported that the governor did was keeping Costa-Hawkins in place, but putting a 5% per year cap on increases in rent statewide. But it also didn't take, because Costa-Hawkins does stipulate a difference between what was the date,
1978. Oh,
1994, and post, in places like Santa Monica that have a lot of legacy housing, you still have the ability to define how that's going to be, how rents are going to be dealt with in those pockets. So it's not a clean solution, but I think it was the right approach. And what I also believe is, and I tell you I've lived this, is we have two ways of dealing with housing. We either build more or we fight over the housing we have. We have to build more housing and we have to do it in a way that is economic, and we have to do it in a way that a substantial portion of it is allocated for different levels of sub-market rate renters. So I think, the efforts of the governor and his office to enforce the housing element law, which I remember reading, I think it was the San Joaquin County housing element chapter in their general plan back in the 90s, right at the time that we were doing a project in Tracy, California, and they had passed a no-growth initiative. And we said, well, wait a sec, that directly conflicts with housing element law. And what I was told is, oh, well, housing element law doesn't mean anything because there's no enforcement. So the fact that this administration has taken that approach, I think was very innovative and very smart. But what we also know is the application is having its bumps along the way. So my approach to how we build more housing is going to continue to work with Buffy Wicks and Scott Wiener, who are working on several bills right now. It's still very much in the sausage-making stage, but we have to be able to unleash the ability to build more quickly and more easily, while at the same time, there's a reason why we have city planning. There is such a thing as smart city planning, and so you need to ensure that the local community also has a say to make sure that, ridiculous things don't get built that are inappropriate for certainly a place like Santa Monica that is, a destination for tourism and, all the things that make your city what it is. So I think it's a work in progress. I'm very engaged in the process of some of these laws that are coming forward over the next 2 years. But if I'm governor, we're going to bring it to the next level. And that means things like different kinds of building materials and the way the state is invested in insulin, we could be investing in different kinds of building materials that are more durable in the case of fire, more fire resistant, but also at scale being able to provide what is necessary in order to be able to move projects along faster. And I just want to say one more thing about this. Before I left and the Great Recession, was, crashing down on us, around, I think, 06, 07, we hit the peak of housing production. About 200,000 homes per year, building permits were pulled. After the recession, it crashed down to under 100,000. And in all of these years since the Great Recession, it has not really measurably come back over 100,000 units per year. And what's also interesting is that a lot of those units are ADUs. And that tells another story that I think is very important. Last year, it actually dipped. So in spite of all of these efforts of the legislature, the number of units in California actually went down. And that was a variety of reasons, but it happened. And of that 100,000, about 20,000 were ADUs. And what we know is a lot of people don't live in those ADUs. They build them to enhance their property value. They build them for a home office. And it's not expanding the housing pool the way that a single-family home does, and or even apartments, or those other 80,000 units. But what it does say is that when you really do cut the red tape, as we did for ADUs, guess what? We get them. It's happening. There has been an unbelievable surge in the number of those kinds of units. So there's no magic wand with housing. It's going to require a lot of different pieces here. But because I come at this from a pro-housing YIMBY approach, while at the same time understanding that if it's a total free-for-all, that's not good for California either, that it's going to have to be a balanced approach, but one that at the same time does what we did with ADUs and unleashes the ability for more units to actually come to fruition.
Cool, thank you. So another priority for the club that we've taken a position on is single-payer healthcare. Do you believe in having California, well, ideally the whole United States, but if as governor, you would be potentially asked to sign a bill like CalCare that would create universal single-payer healthcare. Is that something you would support, or would you veto if it came to your desk?
So there is one thing my office does not do, and that is healthcare.
Right.
But it is always consistently one of the top 1 or 2 issues that people call in about. And it's kind of, we answer our phones at the office of the lieutenant governor. So when people try to call the governor's office and they can't get through, they're like, well, maybe I'll call the lieutenant. So we get all kinds of calls, and it really helps us stay engaged and current. And this is obviously a critical issue. And what I can tell you that I have seen over the last 7 years is I have seen more people get insurance, and I have seen fewer people have access to health care. Hospitals closing, clinics having a harder time being able to stay open, and it is devastating. We have a federal government that is coming after us in every imaginable way. I cannot sit here and tell you that I know the answer to what's going to happen with the single-payer initiative here in the state. We had a candidate forum right before the election, and every single one of us raised our hand when it came to the issue of single payer. But we live in a very different reality right now. There are major, major federal waivers that would have to take place that, to me, I just can't conceive of the federal government supporting our efforts to transition to that system. What I will tell you that I am for is radical reforms that will bring more care to the people who need it. We see kids who can't go to a dentist. We see people who can't go to get a cataract removed for 2 years, procedures that are not complicated, procedures that we send Doctors Without Borders around the world to help give these kinds of basic care to people that you can't access in healthcare deserts in the valley. This is another area that I think is already in crisis, and we're going to have to get a little more creative. I'm a bird dog. I grew up in a hunting family. That's like, it's a Greek thing. They just put their nose down and go find the bird. When I was this morning at the CSU, and we were talking about the fact that we're producing all of these student nurses. All these student nurses in our CSU system. It is remarkable. Most of the 22 campuses have programs, and it is one of the most sought-after programs. It is very affordable for students, and we desperately need nurses. What stops them from getting credentialed is they can't get placements for their on-the-job training. There are huge backlogs in this. So we started talking about what do we need to do to increase the number of slots for student nurses. They need the experience in order to get their credentials. They are waiting for these spots to open up, and we know that people could enormously benefit from having more hands in the hospitals. So the rules and the guidelines and the entities that manage all of these things are very serious, and I have great respect. But we have to be able to figure out some of these things that are not necessarily going to be the headlines, but actually with a hands-on governor can actually figure out how, without losing anything, we can open the door for more efficiency in our system so that more Californians will have access to care.
Great. Well, I know you have to get going to catch your flight, but
I don't even know if if the flight's been canceled. There's the problem with the things. So maybe we've got 5. Can you just see if we've got 5 more minutes? Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So let's see. We've got a lot of questions that have come in about education, and we know that Trump is trying to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, so that puts all the more emphasis on the state level. What is the role of the governor in that? And one specific question that was asked was about higher education. The master plan hasn't been updated in 60 plus years. Is that working? Should we update that to work on our higher ed?
So the master plan for higher education was worked on by Pat Brown when my father was working as a waiter in the governor's mansion. By the time he finished college, he was the head waiter, actually, there. And he worked in the restaurant that had the, contract. And the year that the master plan was signed was the year I was born. But I've read it. It's very, very short. All it really does is give each of the systems a lane that the community college system would give out certificates and career training, that the CSU would train our teachers and only do undergrad degrees, and that the UC would have undergrad but also be the only place that has graduate degrees. So that's basically what the master plan does. The governor is engaged in a process right now, working on updating it. Frankly, with everything that's happening right now, I'm not sure how far down the road he's going to get with it. So the way I think of it isn't so much as updating the master plan, but as reinforcing the vision of the system. We've come a long way in the last 6 years, quite honestly, with increasing graduation rates at the CSU. Just as of a couple of years ago, it was under 20% were graduating in 4 years. It's up over 30% now, and the 6-year graduation rate is up around 60%. So we've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot of work to do. And that's why I go, and I go to most of these meetings. I was again at CSU today, and there are three other ex officio members on the CSU board. I've only seen, well, the governor isn't able to go, and he can't send anybody, and obviously he's busy. But there are 2 others, and they never come. I think in 6 years they've been 3 times at the most, 4 times. So, and not for the whole meeting, but I go and I work with these oversight boards to try to figure out how do we make them work more efficiently and serve more students and get our students through more effectively. The biggest challenge that we have right now is that we are facing an 8% budget cut as a result of the budget deficit. So I was at CSU Sonoma, again, way up north, but you may have heard, they had to cancel all of their sports programs. They did away with a whole long list of liberal arts undergraduate programs. It is catastrophic, and we have to do a better job at finding those efficiencies. So I sat down with Mildred Garcia, who runs the program, for an hour after the meeting just to debrief on what I saw when I went to some of these smaller campuses a couple weeks ago, to talk about how to get ahead of these challenges and to be able, instead of just always being behind the 8 ball, how do we get in front of them? Having said that, there are 4 million living alumni just of the CSU system. Our UC, CSU, and community college system is the envy of the world. And even though we have challenges, and I could give you a whole list of them, we are still delivering incredible results where first-gen students whose parents are working service jobs are going and getting certificates to weld, to get good-paying union jobs, or getting nursing certificates, or getting, PhDs, and going on and changing the world. Some years ago in my diplomatic work, even before I was a U.S. ambassador, I worked, I'm a member of my church, and I worked in an interfaith group, and we went and we visited Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan. And I saw these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kids, and they're sitting in a classroom, boys, but sitting in a classroom in parkas because it's so cold, and it's all concrete, and there's a chalkboard, but there's no chalk, and it's practically falling down, and there's a teacher, but there's no books. And they were sucking up any information that they could, like sponges, but they had nowhere to go with it. They had no future to roll into. They had no economy to roll into. California, we see this every day, and thank goodness for Prop 98 that keeps funding going to K-14. And frankly, because of the last couple of years and provisions, we're in pretty good shape because of Prop 98. But again, it's a floor, not a ceiling, but much better shape. We've seen per pupil spending increase substantially. We have these wonderful community schools you may or may not know about where we can bring dentists and eye doctors and food banks into these community schools, not just to serve the students, but to serve their families. So we're doing some really good, really innovative things. But when I think about the future of the state of California, I am optimistic. I will never let go of that optimism because I see our young people. I see the thirst for knowledge and the ambition that they have. I see a system of education that if we help them navigate it, they can do great things, and I see them then going in to an economy that is innovative and has just so many opportunities for young people. Yeah.
Great. How are we doing?
Great.
We're good. Okay. So
that may be bad news for me, but
right, you're stuck.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
We'll go to a couple from the audience. Dina, I know you had one, and let me bring you a microphone. And then Lynn, if you can help move the microphone around.
Hi. So currently,
Can you tell me your name and just
sure.
a few words about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dina Eigelsrud. I am the co-chair of the Legislative Committee for the LA County Democratic Party, but I'm also the legislative and political advocate for the Concept Art Association. Currently, the governor is looking to expand the state's tax credits for the film incentives, and I know that right now the amount of those tax credits is up for debate. If you were to become governor, those tax credits will be up for renewal. As they are currently formulated, there's no specific designation listed under qualified expenses for generative AI systems that are being put into place and that were so very contentious during the strikes that affected not just Santa Monica, but all of Los Angeles and all of the San Fernando, San Gabriel Valley area. Yeah. As governor, would you be willing to instruct the California Film Commission to make sure that generative AI systems receive their own designation and that those expenses would not be eligible to be listed as qualified expenses? Because if we're going to be giving the state's tax dollars to keep jobs in California, we want to make sure those tax dollars are actually going to productions that are employing as many Californians as possible.
True.
So I haven't heard this issue before. I think that's really smart. And I think that the fact that in the last year the legislature passed and the governor signed some sort of beginning foundation of protections for labor, and particularly as it relates to the creativity, global impact of Hollywood. So I very much support that and would like to figure out how do you fine tune it, to make sure that you don't have unintended consequences but I think it's very, very doable. But that's the whole point. And the governor has been really creative. And in fact, the executive director of the Film Commission is Colleen Bell. Colleen and I are very good friends. We have a very special relationship because I was U.S. ambassador to Hungary in Obama 1, and Colleen was U.S. ambassador to Hungary in Obama 2. And so they've done some really creative things already to make sure that those credits go for diversity and for, different voices. And I think that they've done a good job. But I also want to say this. I am absolutely not a person who has anything to do with Hollywood at all. Zero. But I am an evangelist for supporting this industry. When I was in Hungary, Viktor Orban built all these sound stages, and Hungarians are very well educated, very, creative individuals. The country is It's very, very sad what's happened. But the people themselves, there's some pretty wonderful people in that country. And they have built a film production industry, and they are courting filmmakers, and they give them unbelievable, what is it, like above the line, below the line, however that works with the tax advantages. And Hungary's not the only one. The world and the rest of the country is desperate to take the industry away from us. We can't let it happen because, number one, people know about California values around the world because the film industry is here. Two, the jobs that it produces here that are great union jobs, that are the kind of jobs that so many people want in the arts, whether it's in acting or music or film production. They're just wonderful jobs that for the people who want to do those jobs, this is it. And if they're not here, they don't have a lot of comparative type jobs that exist. But I also, from an economic perspective, and I worked with Colleen on this, again, because of our shared experience in Hungary and the competition that's coming from other places. When California, our economy, the number one export is tourism, because it's an export of goods and services when people come here with foreign dollars to spend. Why do people come to California? Because they see us in the movies, because they want to go to that Starbucks that they think Brad Pitt is going to walk into at any point. They want to go to these places. It's very, very real. Tourism comes from this film industry. It is a hugely important part of our economy. And what happens when people come to California for tourism, they look around and they say, I'd like to come here more often. It would be great if my company opened an office here. And so you start seeing foreign direct investment coming in as a result. There is a whole economic ecosystem that is generated by that industry. And I think, I remember hearing stories when I was a kid of how Ronald Reagan came out of the industry, so he cut all of these credits because he didn't want people to think he was too Hollywood. Nobody is ever going to think that there is anything about me that is Hollywood. And that makes me a great evangelist for the importance of the industry.
Okay, Susan, I'm going to get...
Hi, it's great to have you here. I'm Susan Shu. I'm the recording secretary of the LA County Democratic Party, and I'm one of the vice presidents of this club. I love this club. Thanks for being here. You talking about your experience as the ambassador to Hungary was really interesting, and also your background in education and the boards that you sit on in your role as lieutenant governor. And it makes me think of something. Here's the thing that kept me up all night last night. There's something every day. Last night, it was the fact that Timothy Snyder and Jason Stanley of Yale University have gone and taken jobs in Toronto at a different university because they don't want to be in the United States anymore.
Who is this?
Jason Stanley is one of the foremost professors of totalitarianism, and he was formerly at Yale.
Oh.
And Timothy Snyder is one of the foremost professors of history and the history of totalitarianism, and he was also formerly at Yale. I think they're friends. But they both quietly moved out of the United States in the last couple months and took a job in Toronto at a different university. Now, I think that there's a lot of things I'm worried about, but before I was a politics person, I was a public health person. I was an epidemiologist. And what I'd really love to see in terms of, I love the fact that you have a background in housing, but I also would really love to see our California politicians talking about really big ideas, because we really need really big ideas right now. And I keep thinking of ways that California can be a seed bank of democracy and our democratic values and science and, the National Weather Service and everything. And I would really encourage you and the other leadership to think of ways that we can do that and just keep our beacon of democracy as good as possible so we can share it after this shit show is over. Not really a question, but I guess, what do you think? Sorry.
Well, first of all, thank you for your organizing. You seem like you're a very effective individual. Am I wrong? No, I don't think so. You're a very effective individual? Okay. First, I just want to say, I worked 24/7 to stop Trump. I did it the first time, and I did it this time. I was on the ground in Pennsylvania. I was on the ground in Nevada. I went door to door. I didn't stop. I left it all on the field. I think it's very important that we protect our health. Sleep at night. Don't let anything stop your sleep. I think it's really serious because we're chatting, John and I were chatting about this on the way in, especially if you're as engaged as we are, you have to figure out coping mechanisms to stay healthy. For me, I don't doom scroll. I have specific times where I watch the news. I end it at a particular time, and I have read 15 books since the election. If you have not read RuPaul's autobiography, it will just give you so much faith in the human spirit. It's so beautiful. But so many things. I was saying I'm reading some selected translations of Cicero, like Cicero for Dummies, but anything just to give you that longer, draw the lens back on the moment. We live in California. We have a platform here and a foundation to fight back, but it starts by not letting them get inside your soul. Okay, so I said that. There are a lot of really important things we're going to have to do. At our UC meeting last week, there's real concern about the 4 hospitals. They give gender-affirming care in all of them, but my goodness, UCSF has billions of dollars on the line of research grants. And beyond that, if they start selectively defunding Medicare, Medicaid, for us Medi-Cal, we could have just enormous problems that we are trying to figure out how we're going to handle it. In my work around the world, even before I became a U.S. ambassador, I did this work for Religions for Peace, but then after, I have been to refugee camps in Lesbos during the Syrian refugee crisis, as well as on the Albanian border. There are ways to provide care at scale, whether it's housing care or whether it's medical care, that we don't do here. But there are some lessons that we can take from the United Nations and the Red Cross. And, it's not the level of care that we want, but we have to think about some triage for particularly the parts of the state where we're really having a hard time, and we're watching healthcare getting shuttered and hospitals getting shuttered. So I will use that kind of experience that I have of different ways, different types of problem solving, but I also very much believe in stakeholder approach to doing things, and you have to bring the experts in as well as the people who are impacted by it. But I think there's a lot we can do, and we have no lack of creativity. And I will say this again, even with the current budget challenge, even with the vulnerability that we have to the Trump administration and to the ups and downs of economic times and exposure to tariffs and all these other things, we are still a powerhouse here. We have tools, we have strength, we have people, and we're going to have to employ a lot of that creativity. And I want to say this as well. I'm a hands-on person. I'm not just a delegate. I'm not a micromanager, but I also am a very hands-on person, and I like to be involved to make sure that when we come up with these ideas, that you actually are at the table to make sure that that you don't lose momentum around them and you can continue to move things forward.
Okay, well, thanks so much.
Wait, one more? I can. No, I gotta go.
We're getting the hook.
Real quick, and I'll try to give a quick answer.
Okay, go ahead, Craig.
And Greg, if you could.
Brooke, if you can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't.
You can go.
No. Why don't you both ask your questions, and then I'm gonna
Go ahead first.
Go ahead. While he comes to you.
I just quickly, I'm a teacher, wanted to make sure if IDEA Act goes and Department of Ed goes, how is the FAFSA funding going to work for my students? And secondly, I have undocumented students who are no longer coming to school, so how are we going to find them and get them graduated? Thank you.
These are terrible, terrible people, and they're scaring people and those who are undocumented are in their sights. And it is the most horrible, horrible, someone called it punching down. It is so awful. And so thank you for being a teacher and for caring about your kids. And I hope that we're going to be able to get through this. We got through it last time. It was bad last time. They're more organized this time. And so thank you for providing comfort to those families during what is without question going to be tough. And at the state level and the local level, we're going to keep doing everything we can to protect our people. FAFSA, God knows. But I will say we are not without tools here. And we're just going to have to keep at it, keep trying to figure it out. Yes, sir.
In reference to the closure of the Department of Education, what role and what conversation have California representatives at the state government, what kind of communication and what role does the governor and you see in filling that void that is obviously a minus with the Department of Education?
Well, I think that the reference to FAFSA, that's a really big part of it. One of the things I think that everyone's just trying to do is figure out, when he throws the bombs, what are real and what are not real. And what we know about this is that it's real, it's happening, they're doing it. And I think this is the question that's on the table. So it's evolving. It's evolving. We have state funding, but it's not enough. And we're going to have to figure out how we bridge these gaps. But I think that there are going to be gaps.
Community college safe right now with Prop
Well,
98?
community college funding, also everybody gets federal funding. And the Pell Grants, community college students have Pell Grants, right? So everything is exposed. What we don't know is we just never know how bad it's going to be. We don't know what pieces. I was talking to somebody about the Peace Corps. So USAID is gone, but there's a Kennedy in the cabinet, so maybe they saved the Peace Corps. What are the voices? What are the voices that are within there behind the scenes that are going to try to keep Pell Grants in place? How much of this is show? I'm getting rid of the Department of Education and all of their liberal blah, blah, blah. But how much is, okay, but there's enough people in and around them that Pell Grants aren't going to go away, and that we are going to be able to quickly figure out how to come up with a different mechanism for managing. We just don't know. So it's we got to deal with it as it comes. Okay, thank you very much, Santa Monica. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you again. It's only, the primary for governor is only 14 and a half months away. It's coming up. We actually don't even quite know what the field is, but I have been, we need a, yes. Look, I've tried to enumerate some of the things that I intend to do, but most importantly, I wanted you just to have a little bit of a sense of who I am. I'm a very practical person. I've run a business and I've been a diplomat. I also have been fortunate in my life to be elected to this position and to be able to serve as one of the statewide leaders. I hope that I will be able to bring a combination of clear leadership, good problem solving, diplomacy, and working with all of our stakeholders to be able to handle these things as they come to us and to win in 26 and win in 28 and put this nightmare to bed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Really good to see you. I'll see you in Anaheim.
See you in Anaheim.
Okay, thanks again to Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. And of course, we'll be hearing from more of the candidates running for governor. We have Betty Yee coming by at our May meeting. So we'll be continuing this series through to the end. And when we have all of them come through, then we'll have the opportunity to vote on an endorsement. Another really big race. We have the governor's race. We have a few other constitutional offices. Our district is going to have an open state Senate race for the first time in 12 years. And the club has not endorsed anyone, obviously, yet. We're going to invite all of the Democratic candidates who jump into the race, and eventually we'll have a candidate debate with all of them. We'll be lined up here. But first, we have our next guest, who's no stranger to this club. He was on the board before I got here in 2010. We served as co-presidents together for 1 year in 2017. I think the only person I've known longer in California politics than you is Ben Allen, who you're running to succeed. So let's all please welcome SMC trustee Sion Roy.
How's it going? Heidi? Let's bring the energy. That was a long and serious conversation. Welcome, Santa Monica Democrats.
You still got it. You still got the president.
Yeah, I got the effect. Well, thank you. And I know most of you in this room. I know most of the names on that Zoom. And but there are people I don't know, and it's been a few years since I've been on the executive committee or co-president of this club, and so I'll do a little bit to introduce myself. Dem clubs are my home. This is my political home. Is the Santa Monica Democratic Club. I was president of my high school Democratic Club. I was president of my college Democratic Club. And when I went to medical school and then did my residency, I kind of fell out of politics, and I didn't have time for, Democratic politics in the same way. And we moved to Santa Monica when we moved here for my cardiology fellowship. And the very first thing I did on the encouragement of my wife, she was like, you got to get back into this because this is who you are and this is what you're passionate about, Democratic politics. I just typed in Santa Monica and Democratic Party, and I found the club. And, I think, some of the people I first had coffee with, Janice, Patricia, Julie Dodd, who's rest in peace. And a lot of the executive committee folks are still very active in the Democratic Club and some of the other organizations in Santa Monica. And so this is home. A lot of the things that I believe in come from, the club. And then a lot of the ways that I believe in organizing come from the Santa Monica Democratic Club, our local Democratic clubs on up through the state. So, a little bit about my professional background. I'm a physician. I'm a cardiologist at Harbor UCLA down in South LA. We're a public hospital. We serve almost exclusively communities of color in South LA. More than a third of our patients are undocumented, and almost all of our patients are either uninsured or on Medi-Cal. And I serve a patient population that is very needy, doesn't just need better healthcare access, they need housing, they need mental health services, they need better access to quality education, all of those things. And those are the folks in South LA that I serve on a daily basis are the people that I ever wanted to run for. And so that's who I want to go to Sacramento to really deep down inside make a difference for. I'm also a Santa Monica College trustee. I ran for college trustee in 2016, then 2018, and then got reelected in 2022. And education is very important to me. I'm a son of a college professor. My dad is still a professor after 40 years at Arizona State University. My wife she went from food stamps to Harvard Medical School. Education was her way out of poverty. And it was, when I thought about getting engaged in local government, education was what really spoke to me. And that's why I ran for Santa Monica College trustee. And it's been a really great opportunity. I'm on a board. There's, a fellow board member back there. There's multiple board members on the Zoom as well. It's a really collegial board. We have a lot of issues at the college, but I find the way that our board operates together a really good, reflection of local government. And some of the things that I've been able to lead on as a board member has been healthcare workforce. We've started multiple healthcare workforce programs since I was elected in 2018. That's been really important to me. And one of the things I'm most proud of is we started a mentoring program with our Black Collegians and Adelante counseling clubs at Santa Monica College. Roped in LA County Medical Association when I was president of the LA County Medical Association, and we did monthly sessions bringing healthcare workers, a lot of physicians and other types of healthcare workers to our students of color who were interested in healthcare fields. And through that, not only did we have great mentoring sessions, but scholarship opportunities and grants were given because of that. And so that's something that I was really proud of at our college. And some of the other things I've supported are student housing, building student housing at SMC. We've come a long way in the conversation, having a student housing as part of what we are really going to do was part of our bond that just passed this past election or 2 years ago, and then so I'm looking forward to really advancing the ball there. It's a complicated process. We just had some bad news. We had a partnership with UCLA to build student housing on our Bunning campus, and that UCLA just backed out of that, and so that was disappointing this past month. And the economics around student housing are challenging because of the state budget. The economics around our college are very challenging right now, but that's something else that's very important to me. And then finally, many of you know me personally. We moved to Malibu a few years ago, and in January we lost our home in the Palisades fire, and that was, as silly as it sounds, living in a fire zone. It was unexpected, and our house was there for almost 60 years, and when we moved there, I knew we were in a wildfire zone, but I on a weekly basis, I told myself, this house has been here for 60 years. And so there must be something geographic about our home that it survives. And obviously what happened with the Palisades fire, so many people have suffered, whether they lost their homes, suffered, in Santa Monica with the environmental effects, with people, displaced folks moving to all the surrounding cities. But it's, for us, it's been a, unexpected challenge, and we were very grateful. My son, many of you know my son, 7-year-old Kieran, his school survived Webster, and we were really grateful for that. And so life has moved on, and we had really deep conversations. Am I going to run for Senate? Is the timing for this? This is not just about me running. This is about our family running. Because it takes a family to really do this, and I wouldn't be able to do this well or do this at all if my wife, many of you know my wife, Kathy, we're very supportive, but not a politician at heart. We had a conversation a few weeks after we lost our home, and we were uncertain. We continue to be uncertain about the financially, emotionally, practically challenging circumstances of our lives going forward. But we felt really good about running for state senate because in addition to other things that we care about, education, healthcare, the people that I serve in South LA, the people of our district, it makes us feel really good to represent the interests of the rebuilding communities that are a big part of our Senate district. The state is going to offer billions of dollars of funding going forward in the next few years. And there's a huge role to play for somebody going through this in real time as the state offers those resources to local governments, which will use those resources to hopefully benefit, residents and businesses that were affected. And so that was an unexpected part of my platform, but it's part of who I am as a person. It's part of who our family is, and it's part of the reason that I want to go up there now. So with that, I will leave it to questions. But it's always good to be here. This is home, and happy to be here. Not only is the club home, the church in Ocean Park is the church. Whenever we go to church, this is where we come. So this feels like home too. So. Just missing Reverend Janet.
I know, yeah. Well, I'm sure she'll watch the video.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with a basic one, but tell us about the top 4 priorities for you as senator.
Yeah, so, I think healthcare is a big thing that I can make a big difference on up there. Obviously, there's a wide variety of issues in Sacramento, and I'm very cognizant that legislators can pick a couple of issues to really use their political capital on, and our healthcare system doesn't work. I think that most Californians would agree with that, whether you're progressive, moderate, or conservative. The healthcare system doesn't work, and for so long the Medicaid system, the Medi-Cal system, hasn't worked, and prior to the Affordable Care Act, which made a very positive difference, a lot of folks were uninsured. But Medi-Cal is, not a serious system for folks to get access to quality medical care. We do a great job, at our center at a public hospital. We give great emergency care. We give great inpatient care that's community standard, top notch. But our outpatient services are dismal. The wait times for outpatient primary care appointment, can be almost a year in our system. And that's unacceptable because, if you just start with that premise, I can't get a primary care physician, and I'm from a vulnerable community, that leads to all kinds of downstream effects that are not only unjust, but they're fiscally unsound as well. And so, that's where I can make a difference in terms of enhancing our healthcare programs. And, one of the things the club has always fought for is single payer, and I'm open to any type of system that will help healthcare access for my patients. And so the federal environment is really challenging right now. But in terms of the folks who want to transform the system, there is some political hope in that Medicare, access to care is about to undergo the same thing as Medi-Cal. And so, that's terrible for our elderly, Medicare recipients, my parents and, so many people in here and family members. But, as we know, as progressives, the people who vote, a lot of people who get Medicare vote. And once they feel that, unfortunately, but once they feel that, I think that there will be eyes on healthcare in a way that voters haven't typically shown their eyes to be on the healthcare system in the last, in my lifetime, honestly, in my lifetime, even with the Affordable Care Act, that was not voter driven necessarily. That was, driven by, it was not voter driven. It's not why he got elected.
So is healthcare,
that was why the question was 4. Yeah, sorry, that was 1.
Yes, that's 1.
That's fine.
We know the number 1.
Yeah. 4. Number 2, I think workforce training, housing, and helping people live where they work, near where they work is a big one. And that's, there's things that the state can incentivize to help with that. So number 1, incentivizing community colleges and higher education to expose students to workforce training, incentivizing those programs. With workforce training, you can match students to particular programs that match local needs for jobs. And so there's, all kinds of workforce programs that have shown that. It's not recreating the wheel. It's actually about investing in the infrastructure of doing that. And so that's something that's going to be really, really important to me. In addition to workforce training, it's workforce housing. So, so I talked about, at Santa Monica College, student housing. Well, our faculty and staff can't afford to live near where they work either. Not only is that difficult for them, it drives up traffic, drives up pollution because they have to commute for so long. And so, developing programs where people can, train, work, live around in the same area addresses a lot of problems. And I think that that's something that's not talked about in that particular way up in Sacramento. And it's a way that we can incentivize, there's things that we can do in Sacramento that through the budget that we can incentivize programs like that. And so, that's something I care deeply about. In our education system, since I 2 years ago, I unexpectedly, I forgot this part of my resume. I was PTA president of my son's school. That was unexpected. There was a escalating series of emails that if nobody steps up to be president, we're gonna lose the PTA. And Jen is laughing back there. And I didn't quite realize that that's just to get somebody roped into doing the PTA president thing, that there's always a backup person. And but anyway, I did it, and it was great because it was a eye-opening experience. I didn't really feel or know how much that, and we have a great school district in Santa Monica and Malibu, how much that parents and locals fund aside from what goes from taxpayer funds to the school district. My son wouldn't have art in elementary school if it wasn't funded through the PTA. Wouldn't have, extra TAs in his school, which is so critically important in elementary, which is I was just there a couple days ago, very chaotic environment. And those kinds of things are really important. And so just having eyes on our education system, there are not that many people up in Sacramento where education is the #1 priority. There are, but people have their different priorities, but education is going to be a huge part of what I advocate for up there. Number 3, rebuilding, we talked a little bit about that. And then number 4, standing up to Trump and refocusing our party in a way that we regain voters to build a national coalition. I think that that's really important. And, hopefully we move beyond Trump and beyond the cult of personality that exists there, because that's, take the oligarchy and all of that. Cult of personality is also such a huge threat to democracy. And behind that cult of personality are real people who voted for Trump, a lot of the same reasons people supported Bernie. People are threatened in terms of their jobs. They can't, their livelihoods. They don't feel like government advocates for them. And so I think in the same way that our party, a lot of folks supported Bernie for the same reasons. And that's why you see Bernie's popularity now, as he sort of barnstorms through, swing areas or red areas even. But I think it's beyond just standing up to Trump and its bullying. It's also refocusing on jobs. I think that we can fight for all the things we fight for. Defending our, LGBTQ brothers and sisters, such a critical part of who we are here in this Senate district, fighting for our communities of color. But we really need to have added messages about jobs. Because I think that we have gotten, and I've had so many conversations, our party has gotten caricaturized by people who live in places other than here, that when we talk about Green New Deal, when we talk about all of the issues that we care about that are progressive, that we don't care about them. We don't care about them, the people in the middle of the country who are struggling. And we know that that's not true. We know we're the working people's party. We just have to be able to message that. And that hasn't been on the forefront enough in the last decades. That's 4, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're good. At least. Okay, so you're running to succeed our friend Ben Allen. There was a time when the three of us were all on the board together. What's your assessment of his first 10 years in office so far? What would you see as his best achievements, and what are the areas where Senator Roy might behave differently from Senator Allen?
Yeah, we used to sit in
Jay Johnson's
house
yeah.
and on a monthly
couch.
basis, on that couch. And I've known Ben a long time. I have a lot of respect for him, and and he's a good friend. And I think that where I've interacted the most with him in the last few years, that I've seen a real leader is crisis management. So, I served as president of the LA County Medical Association at the beginning of COVID. And then, Ben obviously, served as state senator representing the district during that. And we had so many meetings on COVID response that, that touched on, businesses, residents affected, healthcare aspects, the economic aspects, the educational aspects. And Ben was such a great leader in crisis. And I was reminded of that in the last 2 months. The district has gone through, it's not just been a personal crisis, the district crisis. And Ben has been so present during this, unrelated crisis, but a crisis in many ways the same in magnitude for the people who are affected in these areas. And so Ben has shown up. Ben has a really great way of finding practical solutions to complex problems. And, and so just, in, what is this, still March of, 2025, as our family has emerged from this, and I've worked with Ben, very closely on, a number of things, both during COVID and now, and I think those are what really strikes me, in addition to all of the other things that he's accomplished in terms of environmental legislation, education, but those are the things that are really core to me.
And are there areas where you would take a different approach or have?
I'm a different person, and so healthcare. Healthcare is going to be if I get up to Sacramento, people are going to come to me to work with me on healthcare legislation. That and that's that's going to be a huge part of who I am. Education, the passion for education is something that we both share. And so Ben has been there on, issues that affect our college, as well as K through 12. And so those are, sort of shared priorities, I think. But I think that healthcare is something where, it differentiates me. I think for most legislators up there, there's, and it's the most important reason why I think I would make a difference up there, because there's just not enough people up there who are focused on that.
Well, we'll come back to healthcare in a minute, but I want to go to the issue that I think is on everybody's mind, and you've already raised it a couple of times, which is what's going on with the Trump administration in Washington, Trump and Musk trying to dismantle the federal government and destroy our country. What is the role of the California legislature in that context? And similar but different from what I was asking Lieutenant Governor about, which is how do you balance the need to stand up to an authoritarian fascist regime and show that you are not going to bend to them, but also we're relying on them for a lot of funding, and how do we make sure we're not the target of their wrath?
I think you stand up to the bullying. You stand up to the bullying, but you focus on policy. I think those are the two things. Obviously, when Trump and people in his administration publicly bully our communities of color, publicly bully LGBT folks as they did, just in such a horrendous way during the campaign, particularly. Obviously we have to stand up to that. but also we have to focus on policy. And so if you can focus on policy, there are hopefully enough people in Washington. They have a very narrow majority. And so there are people up there in his administration and in Republican leadership that we have to hope that have sound mind to not abandon the biggest economy in the country. Not abandon the biggest state in the country. I think it's something that our party so far, though, in the last couple of months hasn't found the right balance on. There's a balance of working with the administration and standing up to the administration. And, I think that a lot of, some of our leaders and then also some of our organizations have been too afraid. They've approached it with too much fear. Bullies don't, they cause fear, and that's not a way to stand up to a bully. And so we have to focus on, standing up to the bully and not capitulating on policy fights. For example, in the, what happened with, what was would have been an easy, I think a politically easy fight that would have made a difference, going forward in terms of when the Senate backed down a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so in what ways can the California government, take up the slack from, there's going to be big deficiencies in funding from the federal things, and you would love to see the state step in where the federal government is backing out, but we have a big budget deficit here in the state too. So are there going to be big, cuts to services? What do you think we should expect, and how do we resolve that issue?
Yeah, it's that's a tough question right now in March of this administration, because it's still, I think to me, it's still unclear what the budget is going to look like from the federal government, how it pertains to California still. Is this going to start with bluster, and are we going to fight back, and are we going to have, are we going to achieve something at the federal level where there isn't a huge drop in, whether it's education funds for Pell Grants, et cetera, whether it's healthcare related, whether it's HUD, things like that. What is going to be the downstream effect? And I think that there's still uncertainty there. This year the state budget is really difficult, and so where to find that money to support our programs is going to be difficult. And so I think the best strategy is to, going back to that first question, is to find people to work with to make sure that the money that we rely on in California doesn't get tanked. And we are not one of the poorest states. The poorest states in the country are red states, in the South. The people who are going to suffer the most are the people in Republican states. Now, we've seen them in the past, so for example, with the Affordable Care Act, where, Republican, they go against their own interests just to make political points. And so, I don't want to give them too much credit that they should be fighting for something and fighting for, a piece of the pie for their own people, because I don't know that all of them care enough. But I think we have to show that point, make that point. That's the political fight that we have to win, is all of these policies are hurting you. It's not hurting, just us in California, and blue states. It's really critically hurting you in red states, and we have to make that point. But in terms of just that practical part of the budget, our state budget this year is really difficult. And so this year, I think we need more information to see how to fight, but I think the fight is at the federal level.
Right. Okay. So the next topic is also related to the federal government, honestly. When during the peak of COVID, we had you come in as a guest pretty much every month. You were giving us updates about the health risks and what we should be doing. Now we have RFK Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services. So should we be afraid that measles or bird flu or one of these other pandemics developing, how is it going to play out differently this time when the Faucis are gone and we have RFK Juniors, and we see what happens even with something as simple as a text message this week, I don't think we can trust them, but is our health, at risk?
Yes, I think so, and maybe it won't be a pandemic, but you're already seeing measles and, epidemics of that based on, people not getting their vaccinations. I think that I do know and many physicians are frustrated for the same thing that you talked about how organized physician groups and organized healthcare groups haven't openly gone to war with the administration on this appointment, et cetera. He got, Republican physicians to support him, et cetera. And so that's been a source of frustration for many folks. I think that hopefully getting him to focus on things that I think many of us would agree on are problematic, like, cleaning up the food industry, cleaning up what goes into our foods, and really trying to lead him in that direction rather than going towards an anti-vax approach and really, proliferating that sort of line of thinking, I think is the key. But we're already seeing, and I don't know that it's because RFK Jr., that measles outbreak would have happened anyway. It's not because RFK Jr. has been in office for 2 months. It's this anti-vax movement that has gained prominence over the last decade or so, and then exponentially during COVID that has brought this on. But he's one of the people who has really perpetuated that. And so I think hoping to, my strategy with him would be to keep him focused on things like cleaning up industry, in terms of what goes into our foods and things like that, and environmental effects, that kind of thing.
Okay, so now I want to ask you about healthcare. You mentioned that this club has been supportive of single-payer healthcare for many years. You said that when you go to Sacramento, that other colleagues will come to you to talk to you about healthcare. So let's say that the advocates for CalCare, Ash Kalra or whoever, comes forward and says, Senator Roy, you've been an expert in this area for so long. What should we do to pass single payer? What would you advise them? And especially in light of the point Eleni raised about the federal waivers are not happening anytime soon. So how do we proceed with that plan?
So I think single payer from a political standpoint is a lot easier because of the funding works for federal. Medicare for all, I think, is probably politically easier from a budgetary standpoint because it's just one singular budget. The problem for us in this era of balanced government is that, it can go back and forth. Now, all that being said, if Ash, and I've talked to Ash Kalra about it, we had coffee at my house a couple of years ago about this, came to me, I would sit down and figure out, I intend to go up there and find a coalition of people who will do something meaningful. And building a coalition is not me going up and writing a bill. It's about bringing people together and at the table and writing a bill together that worked for everybody. And one of the criticisms, I think, for a couple of the bills has been that just the details haven't been there and the coalition hasn't been there, to the degree that it would need to be. And we saw that because it didn't pass out of the other body. And Ash pulled the last one. But I would, you've been a leader with me. I think many of you have been there. My leadership style is coalition building. I don't go out and dictate things, but I bring people together and I try to parse through the complicated details of things and bring out something practical. And I think I can do that on healthcare. I hope I can do that on healthcare. And it's really the number one reason that I'm running.
Okay, so I want to go to sort of our last big topic is housing and a similar question that I posed to the Lieutenant Governor, which is that we have 1.5 million renter households that are low income and pay more than 50% of their income on renting utilities, and which is driving our homelessness crisis. And that's also leading higher death rates for the members of those households. So will you commit to substantially increasing the state funding for rental assistance to help those Californians? And how can you show that you have the experience and that you'll actually follow through on it?
You can look at my coalition of support, that I've always had, and it's been, I grew up politically here in Santa Monica. It's been focused on renters. That's a huge part of who I am and my coalition and what I, fight to protect. And, I don't know that the state has a huge amount of budget that goes towards renters in terms of, helping fund renters. There has been some stuff in emergency situations like COVID, but not on a, on a consistent basis. What I, will point to is, some of the local and county programs, for example, in Santa Monica, POD, programs like that, help renters locally apply for funding, and that was passed through GS and with Mike Soloff and the club. And so, those are the types of local programs that I really believe in, and I believe in protecting local rent control, like here in Santa Monica, West Hollywood, West LA, and then. But I know we have to build housing. The housing stock is not there, and so doing things to help it make it easier to build housing, I think, is really important as well.
Great. Well, I'm sure we could go on forever, and we'll certainly have you back. Like I said, with all the other colleagues to have a nice debate. We'll have to move the table for that. But
colleagues.
Yeah, Buddha. And okay. Thanks you, Dr. Roy, for being here. Always glad to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got some club business to get to in a little bit. First up, though, I'm pleased to welcome back for the first time since he got elected to the City Council, our council member, Dan Hall. And did you get the slide over? Okay, so Nate, okay, you got it. Okay.
Yes, please. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. I will be very brief. I know the program is running a little long tonight. Thanks, Shai. I am here to talk to you about the deeply unsexy but very important work of local government. And we have a massive opportunity this summer to appoint members of our community that believe in the same values that this council does, that this club does, to our local boards and commissions. And so I wanted to come tonight to show what positions are coming open. Several folks are terming out, or terms are ending, and wanted to share, what those positions are. Offer myself for questions afterwards if anyone has any questions, and really go through the process of how you can apply if you want to, because it is a little bit confusing for some people. So if you can pull up the slides, that would be great. Yeah, sure, no worries. In the meantime, I will continue on. So on June 24th of this year, we'll have our council meeting where we'll do our annual appointments. For those who have phones now and are interested, you can go to smgov.net/boards, or if you wait a few minutes, there'll be a QR code on the screen. The boards and commissions that are coming open or up, I won't go through all of them, but it's a lot. The ones that align with this council's budget priorities of economic opportunity and growth, affordable, livable, and secure homes for all, and clean streets and safe neighborhoods. The ones that I'm primarily interested in, DTSM will likely have some openings, housing, planning, PSROC, Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission, Rec and Parks, our audit subcommittee, and Santa Monica Travel and Tourism, along with a whole host of others. We also have two new committees that we have established either in the last election in 2022 or by ordinance under this council, and that, of course, is our Measure GS Resident Oversight Committee. We sat 6 members on Tuesday, so an additional 7 seats are available for appointment. So if you're interested in helping conduct oversight of the Measure GS funds, please apply for that. And we also have a new committee called the Transit Security Advisory Committee, and their role is to act as an appeals board for members of the public who use Big Blue Bus, who through their actions or accusations by a motor coach operator are banned from using the bus. They act as an appeals board and will help advise on whether a member of the public is unsafe to be using Big Blue Bus. Did you send it to churchandop@gmail.com? Okay. It's fine. No worries about it. No. It's fine. Don't worry about it. No, you're fine. So I would just say, again, it's smgov.net/boards. Couple of points. How to best position yourself if you're interested in doing this, because some people apply and, if you're one of 14 applicants, I'll say I read all of the applications, but, there's a lot of pages to go through, and sometimes it's helpful to have like that personal touch, right? So I would say if you are interested in applying for a board or commission where you have some sort of expertise or passion, like email us directly and say, hey, I'm interested in serving on this board. Here's why. Give your top line reasons, your top line kind of expertise in the area. Reach out to us, offer like a personal meeting or a phone call. Oftentimes we'll take you up on it. And have others advocate for you on your behalf. If folks that we know and trust are reaching out to us saying, hey, we'd love to have Dina serve on this board or commission, that's a vote of confidence, because obviously we can't know every member of the community who's interested. The last thing I want to touch on is how appointments work now, because we've changed council rules and appointments work a little differently than they used to. In the past, it was just a simple majority vote for appointments to a board or commission. Now we use ranked choice voting. And so the reason we do that is because there's in a ranked choice voting system, there's no wasted votes. It's fair, it's fast, it's more efficient, especially when we're appointing large commissions all at once. It really cuts down on a lot of time that council has spent in the past. It reaches the greatest consensus, and it's great for multi-seat appointments. So now the way the process works is a candidate will apply through the website, the city's website, and then on the dais, council members have the opportunity to nominate any applicants. And so like the other night, I nominated several applicants at the same time. And so once all of the nominees are presented, the city clerk then builds a digital, like a electronic ballot on a website called rankedchoices.com. And there's an electronic ballot that we then fill out. So she gives us a little QR code at the beginning of the meeting. We scan it. We then rank our preferences for who we want to see in the seat. So if John, Dina, and Isabel are all running for a seat, I'm going to rank Isabel as my top choice for legislative committee chair, and then I'm going to rank Dina as my second choice for it, and then I'm going to rank John as my last choice because we know he cares more about the political side of things than legislation. And then all of that gets compiled across all 7 council members, and we use a method called weighted inclusive Gregory method, which basically means, to boil it down, that the highest, if there's ever a tie, the highest preferred candidate ends up winning. So anyways, that's the gist of what I wanted to talk about. It's really great to see many of our applicants for commissions and boards here tonight. I encourage folks to continue to apply to them. Openings happen all the time. Usually you don't get appointed on your first try. And for those who are interested in serving, please reach out. My email is dan.hall@santamonica.gov. I'm happy to take a phone call, happy to take a coffee chat if we can swing it. And I just really encourage a lot of people from this organization in particular to consider applying, because it's a great way to serve the community, and we really need people who are aligned with this group's values, with our council's values, to apply and serve the community. So thank you for your consideration, and I won't take up any more of your time. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much, Dan. And I know I've been watching the meetings, and we're so grateful to have you and Natalia and, of course, Ellison Barry on there with Carolyn and Jesse and Lana. The meetings are much less contentious than they were last year. Let's just leave it at that. Yes, please, everyone, if you're a member of this club, if you're a friend of the club, please do apply for one of these commissions. Email the club if you're going to do it. We can advocate for you and support you in that, and let the council members know that we want to see you on there too. And I'm not sure if Dan mentioned, but last night when they did the GS commission, they appointed Michael Soloff onto that commission, which is really exciting because he, of course, is one of the authors of Measure GS, so we're glad to have him on there. Okay, we have some legislation in a moment, but first we're going to do the resolution. So I wrote a resolution a few weeks ago. It already feels like it was like 100 scandals ago, but it's really important that this club take a position on this topic, so it's worth our time here. I'm going to share my screen so people can see it. Of course, if you're here, it's really tiny print, so you can't see it, but I'll try to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is referring to the State of the Union. The first State of the Union I didn't watch in about 20 years, but of course I saw what happened, and what this resolution is talking about. Donald Trump has been, a fascist coup of American government. He's a self-proclaimed king. Talking about Elon Musk, what he's done, the executive orders, all of these horrible things that have been going on. That's in the first whereas. The second whereas talks about Trump saying that the presidential election was a mandate that's not been seen in many decades. That caused Al Green to stand up and say that there was no mandate to cut Medicaid. Okay, then Mike Johnson ejected Representative Green from the chamber. Several of his colleagues walked out the door with him in solidarity. Okay, so we're establishing facts with these whereas clauses. We also mention here that 10 Democrats joined every Republican in the House to vote to censure Representative Green, and I've listed the 10 names, and would note that one of the 10 is a California Democrat, Ami Bera. Okay, so therefore be it resolved that the Santa Monica Democratic Club extends its gratitude to Representative Al Green for his courageous decision to speak truth to power, knowing how much the act could put him at personal risk, and offers this example to other Democratic elected officials looking for guidance on how to fight back against a tyrannical government despite serving in the minority party. We've heard from so many Democrats, of course, Chuck Schumer being the face of this, that we just have to wait until they mess up and the voters will reward us in the midterms. If we wait that long, folks, there won't be a midterm election. So we want to extend our gratitude to Representative Green. And we also, in the next resolve, is we condemn the decision by those 10 members of Congress to vote to censure a fellow Democrat standing up for basic American principles as part of a cynical calculation to benefit their own reelection prospects rather than stand in solidarity with their fellow Democrat as he challenged this most extreme threat. And the final resolve clause is sort of just standard stuff here where it's saying that we're going to tell every Democrat who represents Santa Monica up and down the ballot that we feel that we want strong, confrontational, active, and effective leadership from our elected officials, and we don't agree with the strategy of waiting until 2026. So that is the resolution, and are there any questions or comments, or otherwise we can entertain a motion? Brooke.
I just wanted to let you guys know the guy that introduced the censure against Al Green is the congressman from my hometown. He's super racist and I don't feelings on, so this is, and he had absolutely nothing to say when Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene did their little episode. The other thing, there have been
Which congressman is that?
Congressman Dan Newhouse of Central Washington. So it's incredibly important we stand up to this because the person who introduced this censure and the kind of, you can do your research on him. He is in the pocket of Big Ag, all the things. So anyway, and he also was one of the few Republicans to vote to impeach Trump the second time and has completely reversed course and is now in his hip pocket. So.
Okay, yeah, Susan, and we're just with everyone here, just for the benefit of everyone at home, just make sure you get the mic first. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Susan. So I approve of this. I think we should vote on this to approve it. And thanks for writing it, John. I also want to say something that I'm doing with my anger and outrage right now is I'm like actually writing letters to people. So I actually wrote 10 individual letters to the people, very polite, with my real name and my real phone number, but said I was really disappointed in them, and some of them I've supported and wouldn't be inclined to support them in the future if, you know, they bent the knee like this. This was an unnecessary thing to pick. So I don't know. I know nobody has that kind of time, but it is very satisfying to actually single somebody out and give them a piece of mail that might go into the permanent record that says, you know, you suck today.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, we can entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution.
Okay, Isabel makes the motion and Dolly seconds. So all in favor, go ahead and raise your hand if you're a member of the club.
Aye.
Okay, we have 12 in person, and on Zoom, I'm seeing 6 virtual plus 2 in person. Went to 8 virtual, now 2, so 10. So we'll add that. Well, I see Michelle there now, so that comes out to 23 total. And everyone can lower your hands now. Okay, and any no votes? Okay, and any abstentions? Okay, so the resolution passes, and we'll make sure that that message gets out. Craig, did you have a?
Informationally speaking, is this going to the National Committee?
Yeah.
How is this going to?
The resolution is in the wording of the resolution. It says that it's going to be shared with all Democratic elected officials who represent Santa Monica, so that would be one category. And that it also says including the leadership teams of LA County, California, and National Democratic Party. So I'll find somebody to, you know, luckily one of our leadership teams of the LACDP is here, so she already knows about it. But we're going to make sure that everybody, to your point, the DNC will hear about it, the state party will get it, and I was talking to Dina earlier about we can make a revision that just cuts out the last paragraph, and then it can go to the party for them to potentially pass it to. Okay, so I think that settles that, and now we will go to our legislative report. Isabel, you're up. Nate.
So Nate, this is where we have the slides that I
one you
believe
do
that
have.
John sent you, I hope. Okay, thanks for everybody for sticking around. It's been a very full meeting. We have a lot of bills to go through. You all got copies. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly because it is late, but you have them in hand, and hopefully we will have slides soon. The Legislative Committee has been working very hard over the last month, going through a lot of the bills, mostly state bills that were introduced as of the end of February, over 2,500 bills in California. And we picked the bills in several categories that we thought were most important to bring to you. So and then we also picked some of the federal bills that we thought were most important to oppose. So the bills that you're going to see are ones that are being recommended by the Legislative Committee, and they have been approved by the Executive Board to come to you for a vote tonight. I've divided some of them into categories. So let's look at the first category is climate justice. So that would be the next slide. And we have two bills in that category. One does relate to the recent fires. It's a bill AB 246 from Assemblymember Isaac Bryan. It's to stop rent gouging in LA County, and it basically freezes rents as they were on January 7th of this year for 1 year. There was a lot of rent gouging after the fires, and this continued to get worse, and this is supposed to protect thousands of current and prospective tenants. The other one in this category is actually two bills, one in the Assembly and one in the Senate, AB 1243, SB 684, known as the Polluters Pay Climate Fund Superfund Act of 2025. If some of you were at the meeting a couple of months ago when R.L. Miller was here, she's the head of the Environmental Caucus of the California Democratic Party. She didn't have the name or the wording of the bill yet, but she did have the phrase, make polluters pay, which we all chanted at the time. Well, this is the incarnation of the bill that she was talking about. And basically, it fines polluters for the emissions that are causing some of this climate harm. So these big fires, flooding, drought, heat waves, superstorms, sea level rise, all these things that are costing billions of dollars, holding them at least partially responsible. They would be assessed damages based on how much they polluted between 1990 and 2024, and proportionately based on how much they polluted, they would be fined, and then this would go into a fund to remedy the damage that they have caused. So rather than the taxpayers bearing the burden of all of this ourselves, they would be paying into a fund that would help mitigate some of this damage. And by the way, this bill has a tremendous amount of support across the state, over 150 organizations, scientists, legal scholars, economists, 140 organizations are all behind this bill. So it's a pretty big bill. For the next category, I'm actually going to bring up Lynn, because we have a number of bills on protecting our immigrant community and a few that are state bills that we want to support, and then a really bad federal one that we would like to oppose. So Lynn will tell you about those.
Okay, I'm not going to do them in the order on the list. I'm going to begin with H.R. 32, which is the federal bill. And actually, I believe this is the worst. This is the one we really need to oppose, and we need to start calling our representatives now about this. It makes a state or political subdivision of a state ineligible for any federal funds that the jurisdiction intends to use to benefit non-U.S. nationals who are unlawfully present if the jurisdiction withholds information about citizenship or immigration status or does not cooperate with immigration detainers. The ACLU wrote a great article about why we need to oppose this. They call it Defund Our Communities Act instead of No Bailout for Sanctuary Cities, because that's essentially what it does. This is from their statement. H.R. 32 would allow the executive branch to strip a state or local government of federal funds it intends to use for the benefit of undocumented immigrants. While couched in terms of immigration, we fear the actual result of this bill would be a funding cut off across the board, putting critical services to all community members at risk. As you well know, state and local agencies do not generally segregate their funding allocations for citizens versus non-citizens, let alone non-citizens without legal status versus all others. So this would affect food, shelter, healthcare services, legal services, transportation, a lot of things. So we need to vote no on this, to oppose it, and talk to our representatives as soon as possible, because they're expecting that vote out of committee anytime now. Another one we need to oppose is AB Bill number 85. This is called Law Enforcement Cooperation with Immigration Authorities. We need to oppose this one also. This would require law enforcement officers or officials to coordinate with immigration authorities by detaining and transferring an individual and providing release information if a person has been convicted of a felony. Okay, I'm stating the actual text of the bill that's being presented. The next statement is what I wrote in my letter to oppose this to all the people on this committee. This bill seems to bash sanctuary cities by implying that violent felons are currently allowed to run loose in our communities. It is total disinformation. It ignores the fact that sanctuary cities already are required to turn over violent felons to immigration officials and immediately do so. We recognize that some people are convicted of nonviolent felons. Many are unlikely to commit any crime again, are absolutely no threat to the community, and should be able to continue living their lives without the threat of immediate deportation after they have served their sentences. Instead of a blanket deportation order for all felons, nonviolent felons deserve a chance. This distinction would result in less distrust of law enforcement among immigrants and result in more cooperation and safer communities. Okay, so that is a no, and we must oppose that. Okay, the next, actually three are very similar. They all have to do with access, ICE access to sensitive locations. I'm going to start with Bill number 49. And this bill would prohibit, except as required by state and federal law, employees of a daycare center from allowing an officer or employee of ICE to enter the site of the daycare center for any purpose without providing valid identification, a written statement of purpose, and a valid judicial warrant, and receiving approval from the director of the daycare center or their designee. The bill would require the daycare center, if the officer or employee of ICE meets these requirements, to limit access to facilities where children are not present. And this is what I wrote as why we need to support this. Increased immigration enforcement near sensitive locations such as schools and child care centers can create fear and uncertainty among immigrant families and endangers a student's safety. Students cannot learn if they are under threat of deportation or separation from their family members. Children should not be afraid to come to school, and parents should not be afraid to send their children to school. So we need to support that one. And the next one is very similar to that. Same reasons, it just kind of extends it a little more. It's Bill actually. It's Bill 48, SB 48. I didn't do that one, right? Okay, SB, they're so similar, it's hard to keep them separate. But SB 48 would prohibit California law enforcement agencies from collaborating with or providing any information about a pupil's family and household, school employee, or teacher in writing, verbally, or in any other manner to immigration authorities regarding proposed or currently underway immigration enforcement actions when the actions could be or are taking place. Here's the difference: within a radius of 1 mile of any school site. So this one has to do with including that 1 mile radius. The other difference also is this SB 48 is for K through 12, whereas SB 49 is for daycare centers. Okay, so basically that's the difference. So for all the same reasons, I'm not going to go over all the reasons, but that's all the same reasons we need to support that one. And then the last one is AB Bill number 421. All the same reasons that I already said, we need to support it. It just extends everything to include not only schools, daycares. This one includes, in addition to those, religious institutions, place of worship, hospitals, and medical offices. So that's the last one that we need to. And just before I leave, Isabella, I want to just do a shout out for our ad hoc community action committee. We would really love to have more members, and we're working on an event that's going to take place in the next, maybe the next month or so, about know your rights for what employers can do to help their employees, and also how we as allies can help our immigrant friends. And our next Zoom meeting is Sunday at 4 o'clock. If you'd like to learn how to help our immigrant community and help organize this event, we're going to have right here, actually, at this church, along with members of the church. Please let John know, and he'll give me your email, and I'll let you know the Zoom link for that meeting.
Would it make sense that the 421 is really what we would prefer, because that AB 421 would be what we prefer, because it encompasses the provisions of AB 49 and SB 48?
But it's more general, and the other ones have more specificity. So it is better to do all four. I thought of the same thing. They may eventually, like that 48 and 49, they may combine that. Even the staffers told me that they're watching each other's bill, and they may combine that. But I'd hate to just say do one, because it leaves out a whole lot of detail.
So it should bring it all to one bill to bring it all together.
And they may do that. They may do that. But for our sake, I think we need to vote to, do the recommendations that I just mentioned.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Lynn. I really thank Lynn for taking the lead on in the ad hoc committee and getting that event going and advocating for some of these bills that are going to protect the immigrant community. Also, as part of what that committee is doing, we have handouts there. Know Your Rights, you're free to take those. We have one on Know Your Rights if ICE comes to your home, your workplace, or stops you in public. We also have the little red cards that are English on one side, Spanish on the other. Feel free to take those and give them out to people at meetings that you go to, people you know. It's Spanish on one side, English on the other. It tells them their rights if they're confronted with ICE. Susan?
Can I just let everyone know? Do you want me to take the microphone? On this note, I wanted to let everyone know that this past Saturday, I went with some people organized by We Are California, which is California Calls, in South Central, and we hung door hangers on people's houses. It was specific. We'd done it like canvassing, except that we were not supposed to necessarily engage them unless they had questions. It was supposed to be just a friendly, here are your rights in English and Spanish. So they're going to do it once a month through the Office of Assembly Member Shade El Hawari in South Central. So if anyone wants to join me, I'll let you know, and I'd love to have more people with me next time.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Susan. And I just carry these red cards in my purse and give them out to people, anyone I may meet or come in contact with who might be able to use these. So we can all help getting out the word in whatever ways we do. That's great. Okay, getting on to some of these bills. And I think I'm going to, just have a short description of each one because as we're getting late, but I will, I forgot to describe the process. So we're presenting this as a consent calendar, which means after we present all the bills, we're going to vote on just the whole package. Do we agree with these recommendations? With the exception, if there's a certain one that you have questions about or you would like to discuss, then you could do what's called pull it. You may say, vote on the whole package except this one I have a question about. I'd like to consider that one separately. So anybody could do that if they want to pull a bill. But otherwise, we're going to be voting on the recommendations on the whole package. So the next category, so that would be the next slide. Is our guy still up there? Yes, you are. Economic justice and technology slide. Yes, there it is. Okay. So in this category, this first bill is a follow-up to the reparations package that we had last year. Many of you may be familiar with that. There was a 2-year study, and the California Legislative Black Caucus out of that report came up with 14 bills that are basically reparations bills that try to address in some way just the legacy of slavery. So this bill is an offshoot of that, AB 57. There's already a home purchase assistance fund in California, and this bill stipulates that 10% of the money in that will go for home loans for people who are descendants of formerly enslaved people. The next one, AB 325, is called the Cartwright Act violations. And this addresses price-fixing algorithms, which are basically computer manipulations to fix prices. It used to be just known as price fixing when people would go in a back room and collude about prices. Well, this, is being done with AI tools, and it would outlaw that. And it would remove this tool that's used to keep prices for goods and services high for middle-class working and poor families. There have been a number of these cases where these algorithms were used. It's been challenged in court and in areas such as rental housing, food processing, hospitality. So it's done in many areas. And so this would basically ban that way of price fixing. The next two bills were brought to us by our AI specialist here, Dina. And if you have any questions, I will try to basically explain them. If you have questions, she said she'd be available to answer them. AB 412, generative AI training data. This basically makes it so that these generative AI, if they use copyrighted material, they have to disclose that. That's what it boils down to. Because for up till now, it's been like the Wild West. They're just sweeping up all this data, the work of artists, writers, musicians, everybody, copyrighted material. They don't care. They just use it all. And nobody knows because it just like disappears into their data sets. So this is the first step to regulating it by at least making it transparent and, what copyrighted materials they have used to create these data sets. And the next one in that category, AB 566, has to do with the opt-out preference signal. I think everyone can identify with this one. You go from website to website and ask you about your privacy preferences, and it's this complicated thing with these little boxes, and you don't know if you're turning it off or turning it on or how to access it, and then you finally get through that, and then you go to the next website and you have to do it like all over again. This would make it so you just choose your privacy settings once, and then every website you go to will recognize that, and you won't have to enter it over and over or figure it out 1,000 times. So basically, it makes it much easier to opt out of all the data sharing that they do. So those are the ones we have in that category. Then we have healthcare and reproductive rights. That is one that I'm following more closely. I also work with a statewide group on healthcare and reproductive rights. So this is some of the bills we're supporting with Indivisible. I'm going to, actually, this one was brought to us by someone else. You brought us this one, Lynn, right? AB 715, the attorneys and the sensitive services. Yeah, but it falls into this category. So, I don't need to tell everybody here that California's kind of a leader right now, especially when health care and reproductive rights are under assault federally. And so this bill is part of protecting our reproductive rights and gender-affirming care. Is this a Rick Zabur bill? I think it is. So our local assembly member, Rick Zabur, has written this one. And basically, it adds an exception to the State Bar Act to make sure that attorneys aren't disciplined for helping healthcare seekers or providers in matters related to sexual, reproductive, or gender-affirming care for services that are legal in California but may be illegal in other states. So it tries to protect them from legal jeopardy for doing that. SB 41, pharmacy benefits. All right, this one addresses a huge problem, which is skyrocketing prescription drug prices, which are largely due to, as I've been discovering by researching this, pharmacy benefit managers. Now, when I heard about that, I thought of the little people in a back room where pharmacy benefit managers, who are they? These are actually these big companies that probably all of us deal with. CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, Optimum RX are the biggest ones. They manage 90% of the prescription benefits in California, 90%. But they're just middlemen. And so what they do is they just suck money from one end and charge it to the consumers. And that's about all the good that they do. I mean, we need someone to manage it, but they're taking advantage of their position of being in the middle to just reap a lot of profits for themselves. And they're blamed for disproportionately driving up costs throughout the healthcare system in recent years through anti-competitive practices and lack of transparency. Right now, they're not regulated at all, and this would create a regulatory structure to oversee them and regulate what they're doing and make sure that they're not exploiting their position just to make more money and driving up the cost of drugs at the same time. SB 363. Anybody who's dealt with their insurance or medical companies have had to deal with coverage denial. So this means your doctor prescribes something, and then the insurance says, well, no, we're not going to cover it. So it's medically necessary, but even though they're your insurance, they're not going to cover it. You have a chance to appeal this. There's a 90-day process, and if that doesn't work, this is something actually good for people to know about, that you can appeal it to independent medical review in California. And interestingly, of the people who managed to file such a complaint, 72% of the denials are overturned. I mean, let that sink in. So they're denying care right and left. Most people don't go through this lengthy process to appeal these denials. They just think, oh, well, the insurance won't cover it. Of the people who do bother to go through this process, and very cumbersome, long process, 72% are overturned. So what this bill does is makes that information public. So first of all, they have to have an annual report, how many of their denials were overturned, and then if they're over 50% in any category, they're going to be paying fines, and the fines are going to increase. It starts at like a kind of nominal amount, but if they keep doing it, the fines get very high. So this is supposed to disincentivize them denying care for things that will be overturned later, and hopefully getting more coverage for things that the doctors say that should be covered. And then we have two more healthcare bills. I love you guys are staying in to the end, but then you're going to get to vote. Yay. SB 418. Again, this is one of those things that unfortunately is necessary just to increase the non-discrimination protections in California. So it specifically says that healthcare coverage, you can't discriminate based on gender, transgender, or intersex characteristics. And I think that's basically what it is. You know, there's more to it, but that's the bottom line. You just can't discriminate based on those factors. And the last one in that category, SB 497, legally protected healthcare activities. And this is for protecting privacy of people seeking gender-affirming care in California. It protects sensitive data from being disclosed to out-of-state law enforcement that might want to prosecute people for receiving care that is legal in California. So we know this is an issue in a number of areas, that people will be coming to California for care that's being outlawed in their state, and we don't want that information being disclosed to their home state. So this is about keeping that information private. Boom, the last category. Democracy reform and protection. This is something I think, most progressives and people here are for public campaign financing, and this just will place a measure on the ballot. California Fair Elections Act will put it on the November 2026 ballot to allow public funding of campaigns in any city, county, district, and the state. So it doesn't mandate it, it just allows it. And then so all those jurisdictions can decide if they want public financing of campaigns. SJR 1 rescinds California's calls for a constitutional convention. This one has a little background. You may remember last year that Governor Newsom was promoting some gun control measures, which sounded very good, but he wanted to put it in the Constitution. And so he wanted to call California to call for a constitutional convention. So maybe in ordinary times that might be something to consider, but in these times, if we have a constitutional convention, that opens up our Constitution to any type of change, any type of, right wing or anybody with any ideas about changing our Constitution kind of opens up a Pandora's box. So especially in these times, we're really thinking we do not want to be changing our Constitution. And it's been ongoing for years that several states, for whatever reasons, have put in requests for a constitutional convention. We're almost at the threshold for the number of states it would take to do this. And if it happened, it could really be a disaster right now. So over the years, California has put in 7 of these requests, and this bill would rescind all of those. So we would no longer be one of the states calling for a constitutional convention. And the last one, if you've been following the news, which I think most of us have been, you've seen, the Trump administration doing these terrible things right and left. And one of the few bastions still standing are the courts. And sometimes we'll get good news someday that this federal judge issued an injunction stopping this or stopping that. They stopped the layoff of the probationary federal employees or things like that. So we get a rare bit of good news from those. And so obviously Trump doesn't like that. And some of his people who are backing him have put forward this that would basically not enable federal judges to make any kind of federal injunctions. So it would take away their power and take away one of the few guardrails left to block any of these terrible executive orders. That is the legislative package for this month. And just to let you know, if you're new here, we don't normally have this many bills, but it's because the deadline for the state bills were at the end of February. So, we've had a month to look over all these bills and pick and choose, and now they're going through the legislative process. So, this is, these are the bills that we'll be working on all year. So I think I want to first ask if someone wants to pull a bill. Is that, John, how you would proceed?
I think we should see if there's a motion to pass the consent calendar, and then
Okay.
if there is, then, okay, so I saw, so Craig and Susan has the second.
All right.
Okay, so now that is on the floor, is there anything that anybody wants to pull? Okay, not
You
seeing.
just made our evening
Yes,
shorter. Thank you.
exactly. Okay, now let's take the vote, and we'll go to the gallery view here. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, we have 10 in the room. We have 6 on Zoom. That comes out to 16. Everyone can lower your hands. Okay. All opposed? Oh, Richard, are you opposing? Is that an opposed vote or just a thumbs up to go along with what we're doing?
That's stuck.
Sorry?
Yeah,
You're all good? Okay.
I'm fine. It was for the last one, and I was late on the trigger.
Okay, great. Any abstentions? Okay, they all passed.
Yay! So thank you. So from here on, just so you know, what we do as the legislative committee is we write letters. Every time there are bills, coming up for a vote, we'll send letters to that committee. Sometimes we'll call certain people. We do different actions, either to support the ones we're supporting, oppose the ones we're opposing. We do meet regularly if you're interested in legislation. If you want to just observe the committee. Oh, sorry. If you're interested in legislation and want to work on this, we'd be happy to have you. Or if you just want to attend a meeting, know what's going on, feel free to email me. If you have the last slide, you could put that one up. It has my email address. So we might get that slide. It's right. It's after that one. There it is. At action.isabel@gmail.com. And I could tell you when the next meeting will be, or John usually has it in the email. But yeah, we like doing this, and especially with all the crazy stuff happening nationwide, and sometimes you feel kind of powerless. At least our state is functioning somewhat normally, and we can get some good things done. Plus, we can do, whatever we can to oppose some of the worst of it nationally. So it is kind of satisfying to do this work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. So yeah, if you want to get involved with the legislative committee, email this address on the screen or just email the club. We lose the graphic. Okay. Everybody, our next meeting is April 23rd, right here. We're going to have Ted Lieu, and we're also going to have a presentation from some of the proposals for what's going to happen on the airport. We heard about it a couple years ago at this club. We heard some presentations. Now that we're getting toward the point where the council is going to have to take specific actions, it's time for the club to take a position on what we're going to do. So the next meeting, we're going to hear from Ted Lieu, and then we're going to hear from a group that wants to build a little bit of housing that will help sustain the park, and then we'll hear from a group that wants it to just be purely a park with no housing on it at all, and we'll see maybe there'll be some other presentations. We'll listen, and then we'll wait until May, and in the May 21st meeting, we'll have Betty Yee as our special guest, and then we will vote to make an endorsement on what this club wants the council to do with that airport land. So that's what's coming up for the next couple months. We'll see you back here at the Church in Ocean Park. Thanks, everybody. Have a great month. Remember, go to the protest. Don't let these people get away with what they're doing.